I grew up in Cardiff, so I love the city. I love the mix of the city. I love the fact that, you know, for many it is the Welsh capital, and it's a very Welsh-speaking city. For others, of course, it's just a big city somewhere in the UK, and the Welsh dimension was not obvious to all then. I think Cardiff has come together a bit more now, and it's the combination of the wonder of being the capital city of a fantastic, well-rooted, ancient culture with a precious language that's one of the oldest in Europe, and being extremely open to the world and ambitious and broad-minded in its horizons and attracting people from all over the place. So Cardiff is a great city for a start. And I think the university draws the strength from being in a city that punches well above its weight to being a university that punches well above its weight. Well, Welsh was my mother tongue and the language that I dreamt in and could express myself most clearly in, I thought. Certainly was true before I went to university. So it was an obvious place to start, but the limits that you have when you're broadcasting in Welsh and you interview people who can speak Welsh is that there's a limit to the choice of people available to you. So the transition to one of the least spoken languages in the world to one of the most widely spoken languages in the world is quite an important one, and to working for arguably the most respected news organisation in the whole world in the BBC and the network outlets of the BBC, Radio 4, BBC One, the news channel that I worked on, online towards the end, some of these iconic programmes. It was very scary to sort of contemplate it initially, but having got in there and got on with it, I enjoyed every second and really appreciate the opportunities that I have, including being posted abroad to Rome and New York. I think the highlight even now is being a 23-year-old through some sort of lucky break because somebody else had missed the plane, being sent to Saudi Arabia for the first Gulf War, and finding myself aged 23 surrounded by soldiers in Saudi Arabia after Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait, and then going to Jordan during the war itself, and then into northern Iraq with the Royal Marines at the end of the war. That was an unbelievably lucky start to a journalistic career. In fact, the only downside was that it made everything else seem a little dull afterwards for a while. But another highlight, funny enough, was the next Gulf War, by which time I was probably at the height of my journalistic career as the chief political correspondent of the BBC, travelling on Tony Blair's plane when he was Prime Minister to the Azores, where he declared war on Saddam Hussein with George Bush, and then covering the war on the political front line of 10 Downing Street. And that still, it was a very turbulent time for the government and for the BBC, but a very fascinating time, pretty hard to beat. But as for pure joy of the job, being based in Rome and doing pieces on truffles and Chianti and Berlusconi and the Pope and shoes and beautiful ships and beautiful people and all the rest of it is pretty unbeatable as well.